I was watching some video recently that Kevin O'Leary was being interviewed on. And you all know Kevin O'Leary. He calls himself Mr. Wonderful. He's the guy on Shark Tank and Dragon's Den that all the deals are shitty desperation deals. None of them ever close. And he pretends that he's a billionaire. Well, you know, you can get him to do a cameo interview for $5,000. So for mine, billionaires don't have time to be on every podcast around. But right now, Kevin O'Leary's going on a bit of a charm offensive. He's trying to basically go out there and say, hey man, I know I was wrong about a few things here, but you guys should still believe me because I'm the Mr. Wonderful. Here's the thing. People are starting to figure out that Kevin O'Leary's a piece of shit. And, you know, he's been hiding in plain sight for some time. If you go back and look at what made him rich in the first place, it was a deal selling a early stage educational software company to Mattel. Once Mattel got the books, they figured out that he'd been jamming them for some time, and they marched him out of the office with security. The CEO that did the deal was fired. Company went into peril and took a long time to dig its way out. That was Kevin O'Leary's big first deal. From there, he went and told everyone on TV that he was a great guy, a smart guy, self-made millionaire, and you know, he's built himself a bit of reputation. That reputation over the last year has taken a bit of a pounding as it's become more and more apparent that if you give him money, he will tell you nice things about any piece of shit deal that's around out there. Mainly, we've had a few banks collapse. You know, we've had Mr. Bankman-Fried that he put a whole bunch of money into Kevin's pocket, and Kevin then said went from crypto is garbage, don't invest in it. Suddenly he was like, oh, actually crypto is pretty good. I like it plenty. And even when everything was falling down, O'Leary was still out there swinging for him, saying, I would still invest in this guy even if he's guilty of fraud. Okay, sure. But here's the thing I want to get to. Well, O'Leary's a piece of shit. We know that. And if he ever wanted to send me a cease and desist, I would happily walk into a courtroom and back up what I'm saying when I say that. But there's a lot to be said for not being that guy, right? If you build a reputation being a shit and think, well, it's good because people know me and that means that I'm in deals, that only takes you so far. I've always been of the opinion that if people know you for being a good guy, they're much more inclined to do business with you. Case in point, Ryan Reynolds goes out there, starts a gin company with some people that he knows, sells it for many millions of dollars, starts up a mobile company, didn't actually start it up, just got a third of it to represent it. But hey, the representation was this is a cell phone company that you can trust. And by making sure that that was actually the case, making sure that it was an attractive target, people bought in, and then they sold to, what was it, AT&T for $1 billion or so. Good deal for Ryan Reynolds. He's also part owner of Wrexham Football Club, same division as we are as part owners of Altrincham FC. But anyone who's watched the documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham, can tell that there's a lot more to this deal than simply making money. There's an actual effort to do something good for a community of people. It's going to be fun. It's going to help his brand, and maybe he'll probably make some money at the end of it. But it's also just not shitty business. He's not going in there using his fame to extract money and screw people over like O'Leary does. So this sort of consumer sentiment business is interesting to me because it's so often ignored. In the public markets, Frank Giustra had this element for a long time. Deals that he made were good deals. They were with young people often. They were with new business concepts. And if Giustra got behind your deal, you had a guy who was a philanthropist. He's going and having lunch with the Clintons. He's giving a bunch of his money away. And he's making good investments that he stands behind. Those companies that he invested in, like Lionsgate, you know, Gold Corp, there's a lot. Lithium X being a famous one that drove the entire lithium industry for a while. That reputation that he built as being somebody who, if he was part of a deal, the deal was going to be successful, took Giustra a long way. And his reputation far preceded his companies. Now, recently, in the last couple of years, he's kind of got a little bit worried about the economy, I think, and he's pulled out a little bit. He's made some investments that I would say he hasn't stood behind in the same way that he used to. Someone with his amount of money, if an investment that he's attached to is going bad, it's real easy to just say, well, I'm putting more money into it until it makes it good. But sometimes, discretion is the better part of valor, and you might want to pull out. More recently, I think Justra has been somebody who's taken his money and moved to the next thing, which you're welcome to do. But from the public eye, it takes you from being the guy that you must invest in to the guy that sometimes is out before you, and maybe you don't want to chase to the next deal. I love Frank, like I think he's great. I've never had a bad word to say about him. All I'm saying is that he's moved from I'm there for you to I'm here kind of for you to, well, maybe I'm here, maybe I'm not. In the cannabis industry, most people that have a track record are the same way. They'll come in on a deal, they'll put their weight behind it. If it's going well, then they'll keep going. And if it's not, they'll pull the plug, let it circle the drain, and move on to the next thing. One guy in the cannabis space has not been someone who does that traditionally. Now, there may be some deals that he's pulled out of because they just weren't happening, but Mark Lustig is somebody whose name I have mentioned on this website many times over the last several years. When I first met him, he was leaving a bank job, not a bank job, but like a job at a bank with a little bit of money, and said to me in a discussion, hey, where should I put this money, do you think, in the cannabis industry? Where can we make money? Myself and a guy called Brayden Sutton had a lot of chats with him, gave our opinion. He then went, set up a business called Canna Royalty, soon to be Origin House, and eventually part of Cresco Labs. And he put 25 plus deals through that pipe. None of them were deals that he sold out. None of them were people that would say a bad word about him. The dude looked after every single one of those deals. And when he sold the company, it was the biggest cannabis exit to that point. Why am I talking about Mark Lustig? Because he's got that consumer vote of confidence. If you say Mark Lustig is involved in a deal that tells people, oh, okay, so it has access to money, it has access to a network, and it's not going to get sold out the first time the stock dips 20%. Interesting. Why do I say that? Because if you follow the Lustig path after he exited from Cresco, well, he's still around Cresco, but after he got that big deal on Cresco, he continued doing deals with small groups that needed what he gave, right? They needed a big brother at the table to send some chips their way and make sure that they were strong at the table and not weak. Sutton, who also had a couple of exits and was involved in things like 7 Acres when they sold to Tweed for $400 million. He had other deals that he's been a part of in the time since. He and Lustig and a few others got together and started a company that I think has the genius marketing of any cannabis company in Canada. Tweed was bullshit. Canopy is bullshit. Afria, what the hell does that mean? But BC Bud Corp, there's only one brand in legacy marijuana that exists in any real way, shape, or form, and that is BC Bud. Now, it's a term that's been around for years and could be ascribed to any ditchweed that might have come out of the Okanagan at some point in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But also, whatever ditchweed came out of the Okanagan in the 90s was better than what was being grown in California at the same time. Sure as hell better than what was being flown into the country in bales from Mexico. BC Bud is a legacy, iconic brand. Also, nobody owned it until these guys went along and filed their trademark, set up their company, the BC Bud Corp, and started their business model. Now, what is their business model? Glad you asked. Their business model is basically don't farm it. Just don't be growing it. You want to grow it in Israel? Maybe. All right. You want to grow it in greenhouses somewhere? Fine. But not under BC Bud Corp. What BC Bud Corp is doing is saying, all right, the 300 or so companies that have licenses to grow, show me what you got. And the top 3 or 4 that can consistently supply their brand, they get to supply the brand. They get the deal where they're making enough money to survive. BC Bud Corp does the processing, puts it into a place where they have an actual brand name in a different SKU, all the different kinds of SKUs. They've got brands that are built. They've got quality going through the door, and they're able to actually move that merchandise through the Canadian system at every stage. Now, does this mean that they're going to make $1 billion a year? No. And this is the point. This company has not been set up to make $100 billion within the next 2 years. It has been set up to take advantage of a system in Canada where everyone is fucked. Everyone is fucked. If you spent $25 million to buy a grow house that costs you more money to run than you can get back from wholesale weed, you're screwed. But at some point, you're going to have to come before Lustig and Sutton and say, I need you. And they're going to say, how badly do you need us? What can you bring us? Is your stuff better than everybody else's, or is it not? Do you have a brand that people are actually connecting to that we can help get on store shelves? That is a position of strength. They're not taking the risk at this point. They're not farming in an area where you've gone from getting $6 a gram to $1.10 a gram. They're not being compressed on price. They're not struggling to keep Main Street rents for a dispensary open. They're just doing what's easy. They're saying, give us the good shit that's nice and cheap because that's what the market is. Give us a reliable supply of it. Allow us to put it in a brand and sell it on shelves, which we can do because, hey, have you met my friend Mark Lustig? Everyone in the cannabis industry wishes they were on the business model that these guys are doing. Now, admittedly, it's a small business model right now, right? This is a company that is not at a place where it's a household name. The share price is 13.5 cents right now, and 4 months ago, it was 4 cents. So they're already on a triple. We've been talking about them for that length of time, and they're on a triple. So nearly a quadruple. So what does that mean for you? Does it mean that that's it? That there's no more left? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Ladies and gentlemen, a company that starts off small and goes for a quadruple and is still only an $8 million market cap Canadian, that is a gimme. These guys came out the gate as a $2 million show, and now it's an $8 million show, and it is still cheap. It is still going out there at the early stage. Now, if Brayden Sutton sees something in the wild where he thinks, this is something I'd like to acquire, do you think he has any problem at all getting the money necessary from his friend Mark Lustig, who sold his company for $1 billion? Let's just stop for a second and give that a think. No. Added to which, I'll tell you this thing about Lustig that I know, having dealt with him on several companies so far. One, he's a spendthrift. He doesn't spend unnecessarily. If you want to go out there and have company jets and parties, you ain't going to get that money out of him. If you are responsible and you're building a real company, he has the power to propel you, but you got to earn it. You can't just come along and say, I got a rich boyfriend. You got to actually show your runs on the board. Sutton has shown his runs on the board repeatedly and is doing it now. This is a company that does not spend a lot of money, and when it needs money, it just takes what it needs. Case in point, just right now, they've closed a $340,000 private placement. $340,000 private placement at a 15 cents per share cost price. It's 13.5 cents right now. So they've got $350 in the door at a premium without any problem at all. Why did they get that money? Just because they could use a couple of $100,000, no problem. And the reason they can use a couple of $100,000 is because their expenses and their revenues are kind of close. They're like that. Right now, if they need money, they just go get it. If they need a couple of $100,000 to make up the difference in the EBITDA, they just go get it. If they need money to go buy something, to acquire a tasty piece of facility or brand or network that is being sold for 20 cents on the dollar, no problem. That is a perfect place to be. Now, if you look across the aisle at Avant Brands, we talked about them a lot, AVNT. Norton Singhaven has been at the helm of that company for a long time, and they are at a similar place. Been through it. Share price was up here, then it was down here like everybody else, but Norton followed that same game plan. Don't spend a lot of money that you don't need to. Don't get sucked into buying shiny things, and dig your way out every month. increase your revenues, decrease your costs. And they are in a similar position where things are starting to look really respectable. They've removed a lot of risk. Will they still be around in 6 months' time? Hells to the yes. Will everybody else? Probably not. There's a lot of bodies floating down that river right now. Big companies like Oxley running out of cash. Big companies like Canopy that continually lose $1 billion or so in goodwill, that have bought things over the years to elevate their share price that now it is very clear are dragging them down. BC Bud Corp's not in that place. What they're doing is they're building the company that we wished others would have built in 2014, 2015, and 2016. They're doing it right now, and they're building themselves a nice little earner. I like it because the value hasn't been extracted. This isn't one of those deals that comes public at $100 million valuation. No, this is one in the traditional Lustig format where everybody can be along for the ride, make money on the way up, and not get screwed over by the insiders. Sutton, he's made enough money in the weed business. He doesn't have to attach himself to something that isn't real. Lustig certainly doesn't. And that gets back to this whole Mr. Wonderful thing, right? You can either be the dickhead that people will invest in because they think you're going to screw someone out of cash, or you can be the savior that takes what's left of the industry, sets it right, and builds everybody up. Lustig does the latter. He is somebody that people trust in. He's someone that people invest in. And if he's involved in a deal and he needs to go raise $20, $30 million, he can do that. He can do that with the understanding from all involved that you don't fuck the deal. If you fuck the deal to make yourself a quick few $1 million, you're never in any deal going forward. And that is the way to go. That's the way you do it, so that you're here for a long time and people trust you when you need them to trust you. Sutton's the same way. His politics and mine do not click. He's a conservative. I'm a liberal. Online, he says things that make me go, oh, God, dude. But you know what? He's a Chilliwack boy. I get it. I'm not. I'm the downtown boy. So we don't always agree on everything, but what we do agree on is how one should run a business in the cannabis space in Canada, where the government has already got things set up to make life difficult. It's an opportunity to do things the right way in a sector where everybody traditionally has done things the wrong way. To separate yourself from the pack, demonstrate that you have worth, that you have reputation, that you've done it before and you're doing it again. BCBC for 13.5 cents today is an absolute fucking steal as far as I'm concerned. $8 million market cap is ridiculous. If they sold all the parts right now, they'd get triple that. And just being attached to two people, there's more in the deal that are in the same ilk, but two people who are beetles of Canadian cannabis, guys that were there at the beginning, rode it all the way through and never screwed over anybody. The biggest exits in this business, those two. So what are you going to do now with BCBC, an $8 million market cap? You think that's where they're going to screw people over? Come on, man. There's no value in it. The only value for them is to take that existing strong brand that they've built, the connection that they've built with investors and insiders and other investors of a large nature, and turn that into the ability to ring a bell and say, we need X number of dollars invested over here. Who's in? Take my money. I'm part of your deal till the day I die. If Lustig calls me up and says, hey man, I could do with an extra 50 grand. He won't. I got to chase him. But if he did and said, there's 50 grand for you in this next deal that I'm doing, take my 50. I don't care if I've got to take a loan out. I trust that guy because I've seen that guy up close. And there are not many people in the cannabis industry in Canada that I can say that about. In fact, there's barely any. You're either screwing someone or you've been screwed by someone. That's the Canadian cannabis industry, with the exception of those two guys. And the deal that they're doing right now, that I honestly think, if you've got a nice little chump change investment in that thing, you are going to find glory over the next 3 to 5 years. I know that there are a lot of people out there that love cannabis and they invest in cannabis because they want the industry to succeed. But stop investing in shitty deals in the hope that they will turn around. When you've got a good low price deal right there, doing all the right things, go test their products. Go look at them on the shelves. Go look at their website and see what they do and how they do it. They've removed a lot of the risk. They've removed a lot of the expense that's dragging everybody down, and they are just taking the cream. It is where you want to be. Subscribe to this channel if you want more like this. BCBC is the ticker symbol. BC Bud Corp is the company. And I'm going to go home now. That was a solid rant. Oh, by the way, Mark, yummy a beer.